The president had his ultimate and most revealing exchange with Atkins.
The lights go out. Ollie? No, only the CBS crew now is to be in this room during this. Only the crew. No, there will be no picture. No, after the broadcast. You've taken your picture. Didn't you take one just now? That's it.
The following day, David Hume Kennelly, who would become President Ford's photographer, caught the moments just after Nixon resigned.
One of the most profound moments I think I've ever photographed was the first frame where he looked up at the White House. Well, I can't imagine what was going through his mind at that moment.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
Gerald Ford assumed the presidency at a time when public distrust of the White House ran deep. He chose Kennelly to be his photographer, in part, to help open up the White House. Many photographers get close to the president and first family, but David Kennelly's relationship was unique.
They treated me like a member of the family. I don't know how else to put it. Some of the best pictures I took, for instance, Mrs. Ford looking out of the window in her bathrobe from behind. She looks like she's in a bird cage almost. It was taken when she didn't even know I was in the room. But at the end of every day, President Ford almost always invited me to come up and have a drink, you know, with him and Mrs. Ford, and I was the only one.
The most compelling evidence of Pete's access is hung on the walls of the West Wing. Every couple of weeks, Pete and his team bring in new pictures called jumbos to keep up with the evolving story of the administration.
I would say changing of the pictures is one of the biggest events that happens around here that everybody loves. There's no question about it.
What do I think of Pete's photos? They're magnificent. Every single day I stop and look at them. He manages to capture the best expressions on people's faces and tells a story.
When Pete changes them, you can't walk through because all the staff is watching and looking for the new pictures. It is amazing.
It's nice for the staff that don't get to spend a lot of FaceTime with the president to sort of see what he does. Did he flip through these?
Sometimes, even the president takes a sneak preview of the newest edition.
Sam and I just walked in.
He was down here flipping through the photos.
He was whistling. He's whistling, and he goes, "I love looking at these new jumbos."
Pete took a wonderful picture. It's a very simple picture of a little boy who came in with his family. And he was the son of somebody who works at the White House. He couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old. And he very boldly told me that people had told him that he and I had the same haircut. And so he wanted to see if that was true. So I put down my head so that he could examine my hair. And he helpfully pointed out all the gray hairs. And then he decided to pat me on the head, just to get a feel for it. And Pete took a picture, and I think that one has stayed up through the whole year and a half, just because it reminds you not to take yourself too seriously. If a 3-year-old can pat you on the head in the Oval Office, then you're probably keeping your sense of humor.
16 months into his term, Pete and his team have made nearly 1 million photographs, 30,000 of the grueling healthcare fight alone. They record the gritty work of building a consensus, the dozens of town hall meetings, and the hundreds of conversations with congressmen and senators. after all that, there is still one more vote and a few more pictures that will tell the final story. In the 3 days leading up to the vote, it will be a full court press to persuade the remaining handful of legislators. Pete will get it all.
And I took this job for those last 3 days. You really felt that you were documenting history. I remember the incessant number of phone calls by him calling individual congressmen. And he used like the Oval Office phone, he used Katie Johnson's phone, and he used Ron's cell phone. You know, it's like in the limo making calls.
By 10 p.m. on the night of the vote, the president has no more calls to make. All he can do is wait.
But then when they started roll call for the vote, he wanted to be with the staff. And everybody had gathered in the Roosevelt room.
At 10:48 p.m., the final tally for the health care reform bill is in.
On this vote, the yeas are 220, the nays are 211. The bill is passed.
I think that's when it really hit people how historic this was. You know, here's something they had worked for basically since day one of his presidency.
After the vote, the president invited his staff up to the White House residence to celebrate.
And we went up on the Truman balcony and toasted all these 25-year-olds and a bunch of people who had worked so hard in relative obscurity to make this thing happen. It was one of those moments that that reminds you of why you got into politics in the first place. The healthcare vote was probably the most gratifying moment that I've had in public life, more than my election as president, because you run and hopefully win elected office, not just for the sake of being something, but for the sake of doing something.
Pete seems to be driven by the same idea.
I feel like I'm the luckiest SOB photographer in the world, and I'm not going to let, you know, these years go by without making the most of it. You know, people always ask me, what's your favorite picture? And I always say it's the one that I'll make tomorrow.
There will be many stories written about the Obama years. But Pete Sousa's pictures will give the American public an inner glimpse of what happened here, of what jubilation and defeat felt like, of the texture of days, intense and tranquil, of life in this rarefied place called the White House.
That's where I want to be right now.